After my memoir, My Time to Stand, has been released to bookstores and wherever books are sold, I am so proud to be holding this book right now. This is not a book. This is my entire life in pages.
And I'm going to be called a liar. I'm going to be called, a liar for inconsistencies, even though I recognize the inconsistencies when reading the book that I had co-authors help me to make.
Yes.
So it's not like I'm writing it myself and then I'm like, oh, well, shoot, this is a lie and da-da-da-da. No, I had co-authors.
Of course, I'll let my daughter and my future children read this book. This is actually for them to have when they come of age, where they can understand everything that I went through, that my mother went through, because it's such a hard story to take in. He wanted me to myself with a 9-inch. He had mail ordered from Japan, and the thought of the object made me queasy. Bad girl that I was, put it in all 3 of my by just taking out my dentures to try to ease. All the while, my tongue the plastic, up and down, all around. Minutes lasted between sounds of my swallowing and smacking until I rubbed the right amount of barbecue sauce or ketchup on my body in the bathtub. So when I do have that conversation with each of my kids someday about the events that unfolded, it's going to be in a very soft way. This book is going to be crucial for my children and their children and then their children after them whenever this conversation will be brought up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be picking up right where we left off, going into Gypsy Rose Blanchard's lives, where she kind of, addresses some of the questions, comments, and concerns that a lot of people out in the public, especially content creators, have had when it comes to her story and the things that she has said that don't really add up, especially when you're comparing them to all of the different versions that she's given us. So if you didn't watch my first video, be sure to go check that one out if you want. But we're just going to be picking up right where we left off and getting into a little bit more of these explanations that Gypsy has given us and, figure out whether we actually believe what she has to say or not. And I mean, personally, after listening to them, I don't find it to be really credible. None of the explanations make a whole lot of sense, but we're going to get into all of that. Before we do, though, make sure you like and hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date with everything I've got coming out on my channel. But let's go ahead and get into this next part on the Gypsy Rose Blanchard lives and see if we believe her explanations. Since Gypsy has been telling her story and been out, because we all know there are a lot of discrepancies. So I guess Gypsy thought it would be a good time to kind of bring up some of these, I don't know if she likes to consider them conspiracy theories or just, questions that people had about certain things that Gypsy has said over the years that don't really make a lot of sense. Things that are from the crime scene photos, whatever. She was going on live and addressing a lot of those things. And I think she thought it would maybe help her case a little bit and, make it seem like she's just being really straightforward and blunt and putting it all out there. Of course, she has to have her friend Bree helping her out because Gypsy doesn't just do that on her own. But for those of you guys that did not watch the lives in their entirety, which of course I do not blame you, I'm going to be going through and picking apart the very, very specific things that I find are intriguing, or at least, questions or things that I've brought up myself here on my channel about Gypsy and her case, and things that have gone on that just really don't make a lot of sense or contradictions. But she did go live multiple other times and started talking about some other things. So we're just going to skip over and go to that live where she starts addressing the criminal case, her book, and why there are so many discrepancies in the book itself. And, a lot of the reasons and excuses that she gives, I feel like don't really help her case, but, whatever. So we'll listen to a couple parts of that. And again, we're not going to get through all of these main points in this video because I don't want to make this like a 4-hour long video. So, we'll get to a stopping point eventually, but, don't expect to get through everything all at once. So.
And then they show, oh, well, I'm explaining, well, I didn't read my book thoroughly enough when going through the edits. Okay, both are true. But the thing is I did not proofread everything in the book before I went into the studio. So when I went into the studio, I went in blindly. So I had to record even the errors that are in the book that needed correcting. I had to say verbatim. And my literary agent and publisher said, we will note this, and when we go for a reprint, we will correct all of this in the reprint. But right now, it is already gone to print, and we cannot make any more edits to it. So I had to verbatim, even the incorrect information, say while recording it.
But because it's some of the edits is like very simple. Like the football teams are wrong.
Yeah, it wasn't the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Saints. It was the Bengals and the Chiefs games that we had plans to go to. Well, in the book it says the Bengals and the Saints, and I'm like, that's incorrect. Like,
so some errors are that minor. Like, I mean,
yeah, very minor.
Like, and I talked about this. Like, I remember you were actually still out there reading when we talked about this. And I was like, I knew right then and there, I was like, I really want to talk about this on live, because I know that if you don't talk about this before the book comes out, people are going to do what they're doing now. And of course, you get newcomers every freaking day. So the people that weren't around since I've been around, since last January, January of 2000, well, really December 23, but say January 2024, all these people that came in December, or this year actually, people that are coming in 2 months ago, don't know that all this shit that they think you changed. I talked about that literally before your book even hit the shelves. I literally said what the mistakes were.
I called Bree. I was like, Bree, I just came back from the studio. There's so many corrections that I need to make in this book, and it's already going to print, and there's nothing I can do about it right now. It just has to get printed. It has to be rolled out, and there's nothing I can do to change it until the reprint. And I'm going to be called a liar. I'm going to be called, a liar for inconsistencies, even though I recognize the inconsistencies when reading the book that I had co-authors help me to make.
Yes.
So it's not like I'm writing it myself, and then I'm like, oh, well, shoot, this is a lie, and da-da-da-da. No, I had co-authors.
The fact that one of the errors is a football team's name.
Exactly. Like,
to show people, like.
Come on. Yeah.
So that, back to school, I remember.
I added a few things, like the Barbie thing. So when people are like, yeah, you said that your mom didn't let you play with Barbies, but then show a picture of me holding a Barbie. Okay, well, there's more detail to that. So my mom didn't let me play with Barbies when I was, 4 and 5 and 6, but then let me start playing with Barbies when I was 10, 11, 12, because at 10, 11, 12, that's when girls typically start getting into makeup. They start getting into boys, the age progression of maturity continues. So that was just something from my mom to kind of like, in a sense, stunt my growth.
That literally
don't play with
so
makeup.
much sense.
Don't be interested in boys, but here's a Barbie doll. Does that make sense?
No, it makes absolute sense, and I just wish people would listen to you, Gypsy. And you know what? I know that, like, I'm so glad that you're in a place in your life where you're just like, I'm fine, but like when you get into these discussions and you say things like that make so much sense, I don't even think you realize how impactful that could be to other people out there, because like I never even went through that. And when you just said that, like before you even said the reasoning, it's like I knew exactly like why she would do that. Like, just don't ever forget your voice matters. I'm telling you, because when you come up here and you actually speak and you speak on your story, like if people don't want to believe you, it's because they don't want to believe you. But like what I always have said, because they're like, oh, Gypsy could lie to you. No, the talks that we've had, like everything that you tell me is logical. It's logical and it makes sense with everything that I've researched, and it matches up. And there's no, like that right there, like the Barbie thing, like that makes so much sense. Like you can actually gonna pull that out of your ass. It psychologically makes sense. And so if anybody can't understand that or get it, then they're just not going to get it then. Because before you even said like the reasoning behind that, like it was like, wow, like, yeah, that makes total sense. So
I mean, when I was like 6 years old, my mom was like, why aren't you, it doesn't seem like you're interested in Barney or Sesame Street anymore. You used to love that. Let me get you a doll, or we used to call them Weebles, but you remember the Fisher Price little people?
Yeah.
They were like little fat, short figurines. And she's like, well, why don't you play with that? And so it's just kind of like I was growing and maturing, and you lose interest in things. You stop being interested in Sesame Street, and then you go on to watching Disney princesses, and you just mature. And so stunting the things that she wanted me to like is what happened with the Barbie. So that's why I'm like, details matter for some things, and then details really don't matter in the big picture for other things. So that's why I wanted to specifically like add that Like, yeah, I wasn't allowed at this age, but I was allowed at this age.
Okay, so the main points that people make whenever they're talking about Gypsy and her book and the discrepancies, it has nothing to do with those little minor details about the Bengals or the game, or, maybe something spelled a little weird, whatever. No, we're talking about the blatant, discrepancies. Like, talking about when you first got in that situation with your grandpa, what age did it start? You'll say 12 in one, and then you'll say 5 in another. Like, that's a whole 7-year difference. It's these major, major discrepancies about very major events. So, of course, bringing up the Barbies, and you'll read exactly the part that you're talking about. My early memories are of my mother promising a new doll to me if I would just see a new doctor, have a new procedure, not an agreement, not ask why, hold my tongue. Many say Mama was manipulative, holding the dolls over me like that, but getting the doll was my end game. So wasn't I a willing participant? I was too young at the time for me to blame myself now. But I do wonder if I helped my mother do the things she did to me, to the system, and to my dad. Dolls were commerce, clauses and a long-term agreement between my mom and me, but they were also a symbol of innocence and purity. Mama preferred that I not play with Barbie dolls. She didn't want me to see the anatomy, no matter how poorly scaled, of a woman. If I were to undress the dolls to change its clothes, I would see a baby's body, without bulges or bumps. Clean, she'd call it. The accessories for a baby doll were a baby bottle and a stroller, not a provocative hot tub or a dream house. When I showed my own curiosity for things separate from her like Barbie dolls, she'd be there to deflect. Now, you don't want those dolls when you have so many stuffed animals to play with. I don't want Barbie. There's power in numbers, and in my mother's paranoid defensive mind, it had always been Claude and his other 5 children against Dee Dee, especially after Mumsy Emma passed away. And then she, of course, brings up Ken, boyfriend Ken, and the whole Barbie thing, talking about one letter in particular stuck out to me. His voice leaped off the page as if he were sitting right in front of me, holding the paper. I could feel his energy. He was just a cool guy. Hi, my name's Ken. My mother never liked Barbie's Ken. F it, I thought, and I wrote him back. Now, instead of a life-size Barbie dream house, I wanted blah, 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 blah. Multiple mentions of the thing Barbie. But the point still stands. Typically, when you're like 3 years old, you're not really playing with Barbies. That's something that is for kids around 9 or 10. I mean, at least at that time, when that time frame was going on, kids are built different. Nowadays, they're like on YouTube and they're like 10 years old. But back in that time period, when Gypsy was, 7, 8, 9, up till, 12 or 13, a lot of kids were still playing with Barbie dolls. That is nothing to like stunt her growth. She just, I don't know what she's talking about, but I think she's maybe basing it off of how kids act today, which was very different than how kids in her age group acted, at least in my opinion. I know like a lot of people, like a lot of kids, especially like that 9-10 age group, that was what it was marketed towards. It was, you don't let a baby play with a Barbie, typically. I mean, that's not really where that age group is that they're marketing towards. I mean, it just is what it is. But to blatantly say my mom didn't want me playing with Barbies, they were too grown, but she literally did at the exact age that they were literally marketed towards. Like, that's the age. She got them when it was appropriate.
And to think that one book is going to tell your whole life story, like every single detail, there's no way. There's no way. And it would be hard for just a typical person that lived a normal life to do that, much less someone that there's so many layers. I just wish people would. But yeah, there's only so much you can tell in one book. And I wish, how when you sent me the rough draft, and I just wish sometimes that I would have read all the way through so I could have helped you, like if you missed anything, like, and some things I wouldn't have known, but some things I would have. And like, because I hate that for you, because I know that people they just rip you apart. And it makes sense that could happen. You had 2 other co-authors, like they never lived your life, you did, and they're just doing the best they can with what you tell them. And yeah, but.
And it's like they work on transcripts, they work on conversations, but there is margin for error whenever, we're not talking on a daily basis like friends. Because I feel like my story, there's his side, her side, and the truth, or her side, and the truth, right? Where I feel like my story, I know my perspective. I only know my perspective. I don't know my mother's perspective. I don't know Nick's perspective. I don't know my aunts, uncles, cousins' perspective. So the things that I account is my memory and my memory alone. Now, whether my memory is the truth, I don't know, because I have been told conflicting things. For example, I have no memory of going to kindergarten at all. I don't remember that. I remember going to a thing called Lads and Lassies, which was a daycare center for one day. Okay. And I remember going to vacation Bible school where my mom volunteered as like one of the helpers. Okay. Well, my co-authors spoke to one of my aunts on my mom's side, and by their account, I went to kindergarten. So my co-authors then incorporated this information into my book. Okay, so that detail did not come from me. It came from my aunt. And like I said, that is another thing that will be fixed, because this is not going off of my memoir. It's supposed to be my memory and my memory alone, not the memories of other people. So, and there is that disclaimer in the book that says, you know, this is my memory. It is not, you know, it is only my perception and only my memory. So if something is incorrect, I could very well be incorrect. Now, the general trauma and abuse, the board, true. But little details like kindergarten, I don't know, because I was far too young to remember that. So
whether you had birthday candles, stupid shit like that.
Yeah, birthday candles. Like, haven't they given to think that the birthday parties that I had, I feel like was for other people? If they had candles on the birthday cake, it wasn't because my mom said, hey, you are this old. It was because, hey, we're having a party where a lot of people are going to be invited. And, you know, at an age, that stopped. So, like, I really didn't have numbers on my candles after, like, 13. So if I had numbers on my candles when I was little, which I did, that is kind of before my mom started changing the birth years. Because at that time, you don't need to change the birth years on a 9-year-old's, you know, age.
Right.
It's only when you get in your teen years that she was knocking back a couple years.
Well, the thing is, they expect, well, okay, by that age, you should just always just remember at that point. And I think what people seem to like, understand is the confusion. Like,
would tell me, oh, the car wreck that we were in 2001, you know, I mean, the car wreck messed her up pretty bad. It ruined her leg. But she would tell me that, you know, she has memory loss from that car accident and guilt trip me and be like, oh, you know, you think I'm crazy, or, you know, I understand that, you know, you might think this way of me, but I know this is the year you were born. Like,
prison, one of the first birthdays you had that you knew your age going
It was. So, you know, once I was told my real age, then I was able to start celebrating and getting older. It was a scam until about a year after I found my Medicaid card with my correct birth date listed. When Mama became more physical and violent with me after I re-questioned her about it, pushing back against her storytelling. The discovery of my real birth date was not my aha moment, per se, but it did act as a warning siren to be more alert. Dear Mother, I know I could walk. I don't think I have cancer. I don't feel sick. I know that I'm really 19. I want to live my own life.
And Bree especially is definitely trying to minimize all of the discrepancies. So if it was never important or it didn't really matter, why bring it up in the first place? You bring up all these things and all these memories as a way to really drive home the fact that you were totally brainwashed. So to be like, okay, yeah, maybe I did have a birthday party for me and maybe I did blow out the candles, but I didn't know that was a party for me. What are you talking about? Like, I mean, I just knew that I was the birthday girl. Like, how was I supposed to know? Like, what? How do you not? Okay, and then second of all, talking about, oh, well, after 13, like, the candles stopped. So you need the candles to tell you how old you are at 13? At 13 years old, you should be beyond candles. I mean, honestly, like, is that huge of a deal to you? How old am I, Mom? God, I remember I was 12 last year, but what happened? You know, like, how are you going to literally just get, brainwashed at 13 years old? You cannot do that to any competent individual. So if you say that you do not have any mental delays, then there is no way that you literally believed after 13 that you just reversed an age. You had a birthday every single year. You had numbered candles every single year. You had the birthday girl stash that literally said, I'm the birthday girl. You blew out the candles at a birthday party, which, I mean, you got a birthday party. A lot of people don't get birthday parties, actually, like with other people. I mean, dang, growing up, I never got a birthday party with other people. I mean, of course, my family would be there, but like, I never had a legit birthday party. Did that stunt my growth? No. At an age, especially as a teenager, you don't need to be told how old you are. The only time that it really matters is when you're a baby. Because you're literally trying to teach them their age. You're trying to teach them what an age is. And it really matters when you're getting, a 5-year-old is turning 6 because they're becoming a big kid. That's when it really matters. At 13 or 14, maybe at sweet 16, it would maybe make a difference because it's like one of those ages. But like, that doesn't mean you just totally don't know your age. But she expects all of us to believe that, and then also expects us to be like, it's really not that big of a deal, like, whatever, then why did you bring it up as a way to show everybody that that's how you were brainwashed if it doesn't matter and yet it's not true? It was important enough for you to bring it up and really drive home the point that that is how that you were manipulated and brainwashed by your mother, because now you've just admitted to everybody that it did not start until after you were 13, which we all kind of suspected. And you're linking it all back to the birthday candles. Because, oops, yeah, photos got out where it shows you literally blowing out the birthday candles. It's like she just tries to sidestep all of the other information. It's like we have to literally force it out of her, and then she won't even admit it, and then just wants to be like, it was really no big deal. It was a little mistake. But it wasn't. It's just a blatant lie.
And
they're like, why don't you sue the doctors? Well, the thing is like, I didn't even think about statute of limitations. It was a big deal to me when I was in prison. And I've always just been so damn busy. Like, in prison, I was in school. I was trying to get my GED. I had a few phone calls with Christy where she and Dad went looking for an attorney. Christy told me that she didn't get a phone call back from any of the attorneys that she had reached out to. And then later, Christy would do interviews, and she said, I reached out to attorneys. They said they wouldn't touch the case. Now, I believe Christy. Was I there to confirm that information? No, I believe Christy.
Jeffrey,
but
you go ahead and finish. I'll call you off.
But that's just, that's what I was told. And then after that, I kind of just was like, you know what? It's not going to give me my salivary glands back. It's not going to give me those years that I could have been running around in the yard back. So what gain do I have? Most of the doctors are too old and retired now to even sue. What does it matter? Like, I have a kid now. I have a life now. I'm 34 years old. If they're retired, then good. They ain't going to do it to anybody else. What's the point in suing them now?
Well,
there's so many doctors limitations too.
Yeah, that's what I was about to explain. Like, I looked, because people used to ask this all the time, and it was annoying because it was always, and it's like, okay, even if, let's just say, like that doesn't give you the right to invalidate her abuse, though, but I researched so deep into this subject and looked at the Missouri laws of Louisiana. And first of all, most of your surgeries, yes, you had some in Missouri, but a lot of them were in Louisiana. And Louisiana has the shittiest statute of limitation laws. Like, from the moment that you, because they have this thing where you, say if you don't realize that the surgery wasn't needed or like whatever it may be, there's things in almost every single state where it goes from the moment that you find out. But there's only a certain amount of years to say, it might be 5 in Louisiana, like it's like 1 or 2. Like, you have 1 or 2 years to be able to. So basically, you had maybe 1 year for Louisiana. Anything that happened in Louisiana, you maybe had 1 year. It was even past that. Whereas in Missouri, there was you might have been able to end like within 2.5 years, but you have to think you was preparing for maybe going to trial. You had to deal with that first. Then and when I was researching this, what Christy's saying, I 100% believe, because everything that I researched on it, everywhere that I looked, it said that it would be. What Christy's saying, I 100% believe, because everything that I researched on it, everywhere that I looked, it said that it would be very hard for a lawyer to fight this, and this is why. Because when it comes to Munchausen by proxy, yes, some things are fabricated, some things are exaggerated, but also some things are induced.
So then Bree and Gypsy start talking about the whole Munchausen by proxy diagnosis and the medical malpractice, which we all know that Gypsy has said on, interviews, I think in maybe the Vile Files, various times. She said that they attempted, at least the family did, and there was not a single attorney that would touch the case. Now, I find that very hard to believe if this was a genuine, case of Munchausen by proxy, because you only have to prove a few things, and to not even bother to touch the case is a little bit insane to me. Like, you can find one grimy attorney that would take it. There are tons that will do it for far less. And although they may be difficult to win because, that's just how it goes, you can literally still bring anything to court. You can find an attorney to bring anything to court. Either they didn't try, or, they knew that they didn't have a case because there was actually things wrong with Gypsy. So I'll show you what exactly is needed as far as presenting a Munchausen by proxy medical malpractice case. And, if we're just believing Gypsy Rose Blanchard's story, it would have been an easy win. And there is a reason why they never got any farther than maybe a phone conversation, because they knew that there was no way to present a case. So it says that medical malpractice claims in cases involving Munchausen syndrome, now known as fictitious disorder imposed on self/another, or medical child abuse, can arise from two opposite scenarios: either failure to diagnose the abuse or misdiagnosis of abuse, meaning false allegations. So it says if a physician fails to identify and the child is harmed as a result, the doctor may be sued for malpractice. The core of the claim is that a competent doctor under similar circumstances should have suspected and investigated the abuse, and their failure to do so directly caused the child's injury or worsening condition. The challenges are that physicians must rely heavily on caregiver reports, especially with nonverbal children. We know Gypsy was not a nonverbal child. In fact, the medical records say entirely opposite, that she was very verbal, that she would express her own needs and desires, or what she was doing or how she was doing. It says, which makes the initial detection difficult when the caregiver is intentionally providing false information. If the physician's actions fall below the standard of care, for example, ignoring red flags or failing to conduct a thorough differential diagnosis, a malpractice claim may be valid. So to prove medical malpractice, you have to prove you got to establish 4 legal elements. So duty is the first one. So that would be easy. A doctor-patient relationship existed, establishing a duty of care, meaning that the doctor had a duty to care for their patient. Easy. 2, breach of duty. So the doctor's conduct fell below the standard of care expected of a reasonably competent professional in the same specialty. 3, causation. The doctor's breach of duty directly caused injury or damage. And then 4, you have to prove that the plaintiff suffered actual quantifiable harm, for example, physical injury, emotional distress, or financial loss. So according to Gypsy, for example, she talks about how the dentist ripped out all her teeth with no, reason for doing so. They just listened to her mother saying that, her teeth hurt a little bit, so they just ripped out all her teeth. That's what she says. That would be the easiest case in the world to win. And especially against a hospital like, Children's Mercy Hospital. That's a very large children's hospital. I don't know why any attorney wouldn't want to dive right into that, right? Except for the fact that we know that Gypsy, I'm sure they probably, I would put money on the fact that they actually spoke to an attorney and they looked over things. Because, usually they wouldn't just immediately deny it. They would at least look into it to say whether or not you have a case with like a free consultation or whatever. They looked into it and they saw that, actually the doctors did see a lot of things wrong. There were a lot of, weird tests. What's up with that? But no, nobody wants to touch it. Oh, she does actually have a chromosome microdeletion. Oh, that's weird. Why are all these tests coming back abnormal? Things that you can't actually fake. Weird. But yeah, she wants to sit there and act like, yeah, we tried. And then I was just so focused on school when I was in prison. You're literally sitting in prison because the doctors failed to catch on to your mother's abuse, and you're just not worried about it? You're not worried about those damages that you faced? That's funny. That's really funny how it can be all of those things at once. She doesn't care, she was too busy, but she actually does care because, she does write in her book that, she wants her teeth back. She wants them to pay attention. She thinks they should be held accountable for what they did to her. And knowing that they did like 1 million different documentary interviews, that paid them so they wouldn't go after a hospital where they could get a huge settlement amount. Not only that, but because of their failure to catch Gypsy's mother, that resulted in Gypsy doing the unthinkable, murdering her mother as a way to escape the abuse. Blah, blah, blah. I feel like it could be a relatively easy case to prove. if we don't actually know the medical records show that a lot of things were wrong with Gypsy. And the doctors did actually investigate, and they didn't just take Dee Dee's word for it, like, at all. Every time that she went to a doctor, they were running tests on her, and if those tests came back abnormal, she was treated in a way that was, standard procedure. She wasn't ever treated or put under any sort of operation that she did not actually need done. And they know that. They literally all know that. And of course, her biggest defender, Bree, is going to sit there and blame, everybody in the room except for Gypsy Rose Blanchard because, I imagine Gypsy would no longer be her friend if Bree actually straight up called her out on some of the things that she does. I mean, you even hear her say throughout the live, well, I had wondered about that, but I didn't feel comfortable asking you about it. So, I mean, clearly their friendship is not something that's totally open. She can't ask Gypsy whatever she wants because why would she be afraid to ask her those things if their friendship is so genuine? Bree has put everything on the line for Gypsy, made herself kind of look like a fool at times, going as hard as she has for Gypsy in her defense, trying to be a good friend, but yet she doesn't feel like she can, straight up ask Gypsy if she has questions on things that doesn't really make sense about the case. With Gypsy coming out and being placed into all of this nonsense and her rise to fame and then her hard crash down because media wants what they want, like as if Gypsy didn't have the option to say no all 20 times that she was interviewed. She had the option, and she did say no at times whenever it wasn't in her best interest. For example, whenever Gypsy and Ken's relationship was not doing too hot, she had no issue saying, no, I don't want to be a part of that whatsoever. She would tell her dad and Christy, like, you guys can do whatever you want. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to do this interview. I want to stop this right now because Ken was more important and that relationship that they had going on. So whenever it comes time to be on Lifetime, she literally jumped at the opportunity. She had no issue doing it whatsoever. She had no issue signing up for another season. She had no issue writing 2 books. She has the ability to say no. Nobody forced this. It wasn't like she was just captured out in the wild. They're hunting her down, trying to get the inside scoop. No. I mean, sometimes, the media does do that. People want to be left alone. But in Gypsy Rose Blanchard's case, she placed herself in the spotlight on purpose because she was convinced that she could just talk her way out of anything and nobody would pick it up because she is such a master manipulator that nobody would ever be smart enough to think like, hey, wasn't it just like 1 week ago that you said something different? And of course, she wants to play it off like, well, maybe I believed it at the time. That is such a lame excuse to hear, like, oh, well, I believed it at the time. All of these major events in her life that she changes, that they don't add up, well, now I've come to find out that they weren't true. Most of the things that she's asked in her interviews, like, for example, the Dr. Phil, she's the only witness to. So now she wants to change and be like, oh, well, I come to find out, like, why did you lie about Nicholas Godejohn R-wording you? And then, oh, on the stand, you say that he didn't. But then in the documentary, after you get out of prison, yeah, he definitely did. You lie when it's convenient, and that's what all of this is. It's a convenient lie. It doesn't matter. And she thinks like just saying, well, I learned the truth now. If you didn't know it back then don't say that you know it. You could be like, I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm not really sure. Hey, well, I've heard this, but I'm not entirely sure. Those are all multiple different options and ways that you can say something without saying that you 100% know. But again, these were situations that Gypsy was directly involved with. She was more than likely the only person involved with her mother, because obviously her mother's not here to like explain her side of the story. So majority of these things that are, not adding up is just things that she has said when she was the direct person involved. But yeah, of course, she believed it at the time. That is such a horrible excuse, in my opinion, to literally lie. It's like taking no accountability whatsoever. Well, I believed it at the time. Okay. Like, what is the point? I mean, honestly, what is the entire point of all of this? If you're just going to sit there and, wash your hands of any accountability whatsoever for all of eternity. And that's why people have issue with her. It's not because the media wanted to destroy her. She did it to herself by being dishonest to all of the world over and over and over again. And yeah, she just assumed that because she has a soft little voice and that she can just say that, I'm a good person, that people should believe it. And that's just not really where we're at in society today. Now we want to see what the truth is. Now we can look at different options, especially with the internet. Now we can look at 7 different versions and compare them and be like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Because it's all right there at our fingertips to be able to be like, well, comparing this interview to this interview, there's a difference. So why is that? Well, I just believed it at the time. That's not a good enough excuse. The only actual explanation is that you blatantly lied. You thought it made you sound better. You thought it made you sound more innocent. You thought it made your mom sound worse. If you would just come out and say that, then yeah, maybe we would be like, okay, I accept that. But no, you're going to pass the blame off onto literally every other person in the room but yourself. So that is all we're going to be getting into today on this video. I want to know your thoughts on everything that they had to say about her book, about the whole Munchausen by proxy, lawsuits, all of that stuff that she has really said that I just find kind of difficult to believe. So I want to know your thoughts on everything that was in this video. Do you believe Gypsy when she's talking about this? Personally, I don't. I don't find her to be the most believable person because she's not really given us a reason to believe her. I personally just feel like Gypsy has a bad tendency to blame anything and everything else but herself. And of course, she's got her friends there to help also blame everybody and everything else but Gypsy. But that doesn't make her a believable person. So, I mean, at least just in my opinion, a lot of the things that she has to bring up just does not make sense to me. Of course, there's some more stuff that I'm going to be going over in my next video, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. I want to know your thoughts on this live so far. What do you think about her explanations? Do you find them to be credible at all? I mean, honestly, I feel like she's not given us any reason to believe what she has to say. So drop your thoughts down below in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date with everything I've got coming out on my channel. Also, don't forget to share and hype this video to support me and my channel. I appreciate all of you guys. I will see you on the next one. Bye.